Welcome back to the Rare Book Views channel, where I'm hoping to get to show you some rare books and think about books and talk about books and share thoughts about books, which is really exciting for me. Today I was going to go to an annual used book sale, one of my favorite things to do. There's usually a ton of books, it's really fun, there's good people watching, but we are having terrible weather and it is a little bit of a driving investment, so I did not go, which means instead today I got to think about what I might do a video for the channel for. So I hope that you are interested. This is Women's History Month, and I thought I would talk a little bit about one of my favorite women authors, Beatrix Potter. I mean, who doesn't know Beatrix Potter and Peter Rabbit and all of the other animals and beautiful illustrations? But I think if you have not seen the movie Miss Potter, you should go do that. Oh wait, going back when you're done. It's a great movie. It's very sweet. It's very interesting. I think it's largely true to her life story, and it will really demonstrate that she is just ingenious and artistic and generous. And it's wonderful. And you might cry. Just So she was prolific with children's books, but before that, she really just had, and this is really sort of the theme of that movie, she didn't have a ton of life choices, as many women throughout history did not. And she was incredibly smart and incredibly talented. Her illustrations early on of scientific things, she was interested in all kinds of science. And I read a great biography about her, and she apparently was one of the most amazing illustrators of mushrooms, and in the academic halls, her illustrations are some of the current reference illustrations we use for some obscure mushrooms, which I just think is fascinating. I have read some good. This is a biography that I read about her that I loved, and if you're interested in her life, it is a lot about her life, but it is wonderful and extremely well written. This is the British version. This is published by Penguin Allen Lane, so I think that's one of their imprints, and this is the UK version. And let's see, the copyright page here is telling me it was published in, wow, that is a giant block of text, 2007. So I'm sure you could pick up a copy of this used or from your library or other places. It is wonderful, and I just love hearing more about that time in her life that is really touched on in the movie, but she was trying to do other things and also really had avenues not open to her. So she could have been an academic, except women did not do that at the time. So that is a wonderful book if you want to hear more about that and her later life experiences. I also have a book of her letters and of her journal, but I got this at a auction with a bunch of other things, and it is amazing. First of all, it feels great. It's one of those heavy kind of art books where the pages just feel like luxurious paper, and they're just wonderful. And it really has her early works, her illustrations, but also some of her other, here's the mushrooms. It has great examples of all of the different things in her life that she got into from an illustration standpoint. There's a wonderful introduction by someone who was an educator explaining why she compiled these and how she went about editing it. It's just wonderful. This is The Art of Beatrix Potter with an appreciation by Anne Carroll Moore, published by Warren Books, which is, of course, the publisher of her books. And Mr. Warren, tragic. I don't want to give it away. Watch the movie. It's wonderful. So one of the big points in her life was that she was incredibly generous, and she donated a significant amount of land to the British National Trust. So that's publicly owned, and it is gorgeous. It is in the Lake District. I am so lucky that I once got to go, and I will tell you that part of the arrangement for maintaining that land as part of the public trust, they also have her home, and it is basically a museum of sorts that you can visit, and you have to get tickets for specific times. It's very small. They don't want very many people in there at one time, but it is so worth it. There's a beautiful garden, and I don't know how they're arranging this because I did not see a fence, but there are little bunnies hopping around, so you can see Peter Rabbit himself, and you can see the house that she lived in and what her life must have really been like. This was not electric lights and small, so that is interesting. But they also have laid out the books where illustrations are inspired by the view from the house, some of the furniture in the house, and they have the illustration open so you can see what she saw, what she was actually illustrating in the books, which is just lovely. This is the guide you can get there, and oh my gosh, you can see this is the actual house, and it's so wonderful in good weather, in bad weather. It was a little bit drizzly when we were there, but here's an example of it. This is the outside door, and then here are some of the illustrations where she used those settings again in the illustrations, and to see it in person is really exciting. So if you ever have the chance to do that, seize it. There are many editions of these books, and they've been around a long time. She was really turn of the century, the last century, so she was operating at a time when the edition, they've been reissued so many times. There are a lot of editions. This is the copy that I definitely grew up with, and I have the collected works. You can get these, I have them they're sort of in a cardboard sleeve of all of them, and I got them at a book sale at a bargain price, and I would love to have a nicer copy. I wish I had the one with the buckle. They have them where it's in a case with a handle, so fancy, but I did not pay much for these. And you can see this has the white dust jacket that I remember from my youth. The end papers have little animals around them. The front cover is this green, and it's flat printed. There's an illustration here, but it's just one piece of cardboard. It's on here. And then on the copyright page, this is the American edition. There's a ton of legalese here in very small type, and it does say that it was published in the United States, and it says when it was first published was 1902. This impression, 1989. The dust jacket on the back has the barcode and the International Standardized Book Number, the ISBN. They started doing this in the 70s, so, and the barcode later. So I know 70s, 80s, and the copyright page says 80s. In the earlier versions, this is my vintage copy of Peter Rabbit. In the earlier versions, this is not flat printed. This is raised, and there's embossed. This is imprinted. This is a separate piece. This illustration is a piece of paper that's been pasted, like a frontispiece. The type on the spine, you can see, is different and a little more elaborate, and it's gilt. This is what we have now. Gotten much more economical. But I don't have a great answer for you on date of this copy, because when you look at it in this copy, and I've wondered if this is how it is supposed to be. This is the front. There is no end paper back here. It's just glued on. And then behind the title page, where the copyright should be, blank. And then there's a few more pages. There's blank pages in between the leaves, but there's no copyright page at all. I do not know what year this is. I'll pretend it's amazingly vintage. Here's another example of one that has the raised, you can see it's slightly shiny. That's the front, is the paste down on the front. It does have a slight rim that goes around it that's embossed into the cover. The type is that font, the same font as my Peter Rabbit, but it's not gilt, so I don't know. I have seen some of the first editions, and they aren't even all rectangular. Some of them are octangular or triangular. This one has the end papers with the small animals. It says here, it's got a frontispiece, and then this one, and it says Frederick Warren and Company, London and New York. And then this one on the copyright page, it says Frederick Warren, London, England, but it has an ISBN listed. And then it says printed in Great Britain for the publishers by William Clowes and Sons Limited, London, Beccles and Colchester, pronunciation, question mark. And then it has, I think this is a phone number, and it has 6 digits. So sometime in our not too distant past, but it has an ISBN, so maybe 70s. It doesn't have that, there are no blank pages after the leaves. There's no blank pages intermixed. So I would say this one is later, but I have never found a guide. I don't really know exactly how to diagnose these points. I also have the Tailor of Gloucestershire. I've been to Gloucestershire, so I feel this one is close to home. I feel like this is a great thing to have if you get to go to England, to have the Beatrix Potter from the place you visited. This has a paste on, it's triangular, and I wonder, I feel like production costs must be higher for something like that. It does have it's got a little bit of an imprinted border around the illustration. It has the end paper, with the animals. And then here, this illustration looks like it's almost faded, but this is the same. It's a slightly different font, I think. And on the copyright page, there's not nearly as much information. It says Frederick Warne and Company Limited, London, England, printed for the publishers by Jared and Sons Limited, Norwich, and then that 6-digit phone number. But there's no indication of a ISBN of the number, so I would think this one is slightly earlier. This guy has the dust jacket, which is a big help, because in this case, look at the end papers on this, is totally different. And this has the British price on it in their old school currency that they don't use now. So I think that's 70s that they changed over. This one has this on the title page, and it feels like it's different paper. So there's the end paper, the facing page, the first title page, blank pages, and then the title page. And this is all it says on where there should be a copyright. Printed in Great Britain. So this is definitely vintage, and it does have these are the blank pages where the threads go through the leaves. So I think this one is earlier, but I don't really know. This is another one that it has the paste on. You can see where this is embossed in the cover. It's indented in as the border. It's easier to see. It has that the font on the spine that's similar to my Peter Rabbit. Has a name in it. It has the same, that other end paper where they're gathered around in the school circle. And it has the title page and then blank page, and then it says the story of Miss Moppet. And on this one on the copyright page is slightly different than the other one. It says copyright in all countries. Signatory to the Berne Convention. I've never seen that before. Frederick Warne and Company Limited, London, printed in Great Britain. So they're claiming their copyright, but there is no date. And I think the ones that have the blank pages between the leaves, this one does, I think these are the earlier ones. I am suspecting, based on the other clues, that this end paper illustration, this one, is the earlier one. And I am almost thinking that my Peter Rabbit with the gilt on the spine is the earliest. And it looks like it has been chewed by a rabbit slightly. And I'm saying it's gilt, but now I'm actually not sure if that's just a different color. In any event, there are many copies. There's also a 100th anniversary one that they started putting out for each of the books 100 years after they were originally published. And you can buy those. They have a gold, instead of the white dust jacket, they have a gold one that is really pretty. And I think those would be fun to collect. They'd be really fun to give as gifts. These are perfect if you need something for a Christmas stocking. If you know someone who loves mushrooms, I think the book of her illustrations would be a great present. I think if you know someone who is into children's books, all these books are fantastic in new or vintage condition. If you know someone who is a big fan of these works or these types of works, I think as a baby shower gift, these are amazing. The vintage ones, partly because there's so many editions, they really run the gamut in price. If you can find one from a very reputable retail store or rare book store where they can tell you what edition and why they believe it's that edition, they can really command a high price. I would say hundreds for one of her earlier books in the Peter Rabbit, the small format. The later books can be a little bit more obtainable because once she did the first dozen or so, she was so incredibly popular, they started printing a lot more copies. So a first edition of a later book, there are many more than a first edition of Peter Rabbit. There are just only a few. So I would say the price will run that scale right on down from the first one to say the 30th you're gonna get a little more affordable. You can get a vintage one for maybe $10 on eBay, maybe less if you're lucky, in nice condition. I think where I personally draw the line for my vintage copies, which I try to pick them up whenever I have the chance, I like when they have the paste down illustration on the front and that rim embossed on the cover. I think that's a good marker of a vintage copy, even though I can't really tell how vintage they are. I think these, I only paid a few dollars for any of them, usually at a book sale. Peter Rabbit, I actually don't know. I didn't make a note of it. And the others, I think maybe $2 to $5, depending on where I got them, which is, I think, incredibly reasonable. There are also some books that she wrote, the Caravan, that is in slightly larger format. And if you have a friend or someone that you're shopping for, I think that is a really great, the Fairy Caravan is a really great choice. It's less common, it's less popular, but it's beautiful and is a great gift. So those are the books that I have by Beatrix Potter. I actually have quite a few more on the upper shelf, and I really enjoy reading about her life as well as enjoying the books. And if you have a chance to go to the Lake District, take advantage of it, because it's beautiful in general, but seeing her home and the other buildings in town and her illustrations it's just such a treat. It's totally worth it. So if you are a Beatrix Potter fan, please let me know. Let me know if you have editions, if you have any knowledge you could share about how to tell which edition is which year. That would be incredible for me to hear about. And if you love a different woman author that we should be talking about this month, please let me know that too. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Please let me know. I'm always looking for if people are interested to join me for bits of my collection or my shopping trips or my searching. And thank you for watching, and happy reading.